You're about to walk away from someone who actually loves you, and you don't even realize it yet. That sounds dramatic, but stay with me because what you're feeling right now isn't what you think it is. The confusion, the doubt, the urge to pull back, it's not always a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it's exactly what shows you something real is happening. Most men don't realize this, but when a woman truly loves you, it rarely looks perfect on the surface. It doesn't always feel easy. In fact, it can feel uncertain, unpredictable, even frustrating at times. And that's where most people make the biggest mistake of their lives. They quit right before everything becomes clear. Here's where it gets interesting. You've probably been taught that love should feel smooth, obvious, and effortless. That if she really cares, she'll make it easy for you. She'll always respond the way you expect. She'll always be warm, consistent, and clear. But real emotional investment doesn't work like that. When a woman genuinely cares about you, her emotions become deeper. And depth brings complexity. She starts thinking more, feeling more, overanalyzing small things, testing situations without even realizing it. And you start misreading all of it. You see her silence as distance, her hesitation as disinterest, her emotional moments as instability. But what if I told you those are often signs she's already attached? Pay attention to this part. A woman who doesn't care stays simple, predictable, detached. She doesn't question things because she has nothing to lose. She doesn't react strongly because your presence doesn't deeply affect her. But the one who loves you, she notices everything. The way you speak, the way you respond, the way you show up or don't. And sometimes, instead of expressing it clearly, she processes it internally. That's when you start seeing mixed signals, and that's where most men panic. They think, something changed. They think, she's losing interest. They think, I should leave before I get hurt. But that reaction is exactly what destroys something real. Let me show you something subtle. Think about the moments when she gets quiet. Not distant in a cold way, but quiet in a thinking way. Like she's holding something back. Most people assume that's disconnection. It's not. It's emotional processing. She's trying to understand what you mean to her. She's trying to evaluate if you're consistent, if you're safe, if you're worth opening up to fully. And here's the part nobody tells you. When she reaches that stage, she's already emotionally invested. But instead of seeing that, you start pulling away. You mirror her silence. You become colder. You create space. And suddenly the connection weakens. Not because she stopped caring, but because you misread her. This is why timing matters more than effort. You don't lose people because you didn't try hard enough. You lose them because you misunderstood the moment. Here's where most men don't realize what's actually happening. There's a phase in emotional connection where things stop feeling exciting and start feeling real. And real doesn't give you constant reassurance. Real tests your patience, your perception, your emotional intelligence. And if you don't understand that phase, you walk away thinking you avoided a mistake, when in reality, you walked away from something meaningful. Ask yourself this honestly. Has she ever shown you care in small, quiet ways? Not big, dramatic gestures, not obvious displays, but subtle things. Checking on you. Remembering small details. Reacting emotionally when something feels off between you, that's not random, that's investment. And investment doesn't disappear overnight, it just changes form. Here's where it gets deeper. When a woman starts caring deeply, she also becomes more cautious. Not because she wants to push you away, but because she doesn't want to get hurt. So she pulls back slightly, observes more, speaks less, feels more. And if you don't recognize that shift, you assume the worst. You think, she's not the same anymore. But she is. She's just more emotionally involved than before. And that scares her a little. But it also scares you. Because now things feel uncertain. And uncertainty makes people quit. But quitting at that moment, that's the mistake. Because that's the exact point where things could become something real. Let me tell you something powerful. Attraction is easy to start, but emotional connection is hard to sustain. And the moment it starts getting real, it stops being obvious. That's why so many connections fail, not because there wasn't love, but because there wasn't understanding. Most men are trained to respond to clarity. If she's warm, they move forward. If she's cold, they step back. But real emotional dynamics aren't that simple. Sometimes, the person who cares the most shows it in the most confusing ways. And if you're not aware of that, you'll misinterpret everything. Here's a question that might change how you see things. What if the distance you're feeling isn't rejection, but hesitation? What if her silence isn't disinterest, but fear of getting too attached? What if the connection isn't fading, but evolving? Think about that. Because the answer to those questions determines whether you stay or walk away. And most people never stop long enough to ask them. They react, they assume, they leave, and later they realize what they had. But by then, it's gone. Now listen carefully. This doesn't mean you should chase endlessly. It doesn't mean you should ignore clear signs of disrespect or indifference. There's a difference. But what I'm talking about is something more subtle. Moments where things feel unclear, but not empty. Moments where her actions still show care, even if her words don't. Moments where the connection still exists, but feels quieter. That's not the end. That's depth. And depth requires patience. Here's where most men don't realize their role. When things become emotionally complex, she's watching how you respond. Do you become reactive? Do you pull away? Do you lose confidence? Or do you stay grounded? Do you understand the moment instead of fighting it? Because that response tells her everything. It tells her whether you're someone she can trust emotionally or someone who disappears when things aren't easy. And that decision changes everything. You don't need perfect words. You don't need grand gestures. You need awareness. Because awareness keeps you from making irreversible mistakes in temporary moments. Let me say that again. Temporary confusion should never lead to permanent decisions. But that's exactly what most people do. They feel uncertain for a few days and end something that could have lasted years. And later, they look back and realize, it wasn't broken. I just didn't understand it. Here's the truth most people avoid. Love doesn't always feel like clarity. Sometimes it feels like doubt, right before it becomes certainty. And if you can't sit through that doubt, you'll never reach that certainty. That's why patience isn't weakness. It's emotional intelligence. Now think about your situation, not emotionally, logically. Has she completely withdrawn? Or has she just become less predictable? Has she stopped caring? Or has she just stopped expressing it the way you expect? There's a difference, and that difference is everything. Because one leads to an ending. The other leads to something real. Here's where it all comes together. The moment you're thinking about quitting is often the moment you need to understand more, not less. To observe more, not react more. To stay present, not disappear. Because clarity doesn't come from running away. It comes from staying long enough to see the truth. And the truth is usually quieter than you expect. It's in her small actions, her subtle reactions, her emotional shifts, not just her words. So before you walk away, ask yourself one final question. Am I leaving because there's nothing here? Or because I don't understand what's here? Be honest, because your answer will define what happens next. And here's the part that stays with you. If you walk away from something real, you don't just lose that person. You lose the version of life that could have happened with them. And that's not something you can easily replace. So don't rush this. Don't let temporary confusion convince you that something meaningful isn't there. Because sometimes, the person you're about to quit on is the one who truly loves you. And if you pay attention, really pay attention, you'll see it. Not loudly, not perfectly, but clearly enough to stay. And sometimes staying just a little longer is what changes everything. If this made you pause and think differently, hold on to that feeling. That awareness is rare, and it might just be the thing that saves you from making a decision you can't undo.